Welcome to my madness, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I just want to show you guys my collection, at least the portion of my collection that I keep out and on display. I've done these before. Usually I just pull out the video camera and just walk through the collection and talk. Today I thought I'd try something a little bit different, just because I hate that shaky cam look in videos when people do collection videos, and I didn't want to do that to you guys, so I figured a slideshow would work, just to kind of walk you guys through the major portions of my collection. So let's go ahead and jump right in. First up, we have one of my Justice League shelves. Now, I exclusively collect 6-inch scale, so all my DC stuff is all going to be mostly older stuff. So you can see here we got a lot of DC UC stuff. There is some DC superheroes, but I believe everything that you see here is Mattel. This is just kind of a general, big Justice League. We got a couple of versions of Blue Beetle. You got Cyborg, Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. You got Hawkman back there, Spectre's back there. There's a version of Steel. I also have a really cool popcorn bucket back there that you can't really see, but that's the Blue Beetle bug that I got when that movie came out a couple years ago from Cinemark.com, and it's great. I love that thing. Works really, really well and scales well, I think, with 6-inch scale stuff. Next up, we have one of my Batman shelves. This one here, I've got the McFarlane 66 Batman there in the background. Then I've got the, I believe that's the Batman v Superman Batmobile that I put up there. And then just a lot of different versions of Batman and some of his, partners in Justice. You got a couple versions of Batgirl. We've got Red Hood. You've got Azrael in his kind of more armored Azrael Bat's suit. There's stuff there from DC Direct. There's stuff there from Mafex, from DC UC, DC Superheroes. All kinds of stuff. Animated versions of Batman. I got a couple of Batman 66 there towards the back, including that Batman 66 robot Batman. I absolutely love that figure. Highly recommend picking it up if you get a chance. There's some Revoltech on that shelf. Even got a custom Batman right there up at the front made from a Marvel Legends. But this is just one of my Batman shelves. The other Batman shelf we've got here is really geared more towards the villains, although there on the right you can see we've got some of the movie versions of Batman and some of the Dark Knight Returns stuff there at the back. The shelf is pretty cramped, and this, I believe, is the Justice League version, the Mattel Justice League version of the Batmobile, which is great because it's all 6-inch scale stuff, so it works really well with my 6-inch scale collection there. But same thing with this shelf. You got animated versions of characters, live action versions of characters. You got Mattel, you've got Revoltech, you've got Mafex, SH Figuarts, there's DC Direct, there's DC Collectibles on this shelf too, I think. Just a lot of stuff. Going back to Kenner, the Bane and the Man-Bat there are both old school Kenner figures from the late 90s or early 2000s, but they're 6-inch scale, so they work really well. And Batman, even though he's not my favorite character, he's got a lot of, supporting characters and villains that just make it really cool to build up a display with him. And then next, of course, we have a Return of Superman / Death of Superman / Reign of Superman shelf that I'm building up, along with all my Green Lantern figures there. Again, all 6-inch scale, so across the board, Mattel, DC Direct. I've got Mafex there with the steel right there up the front. Do have a McFarlane Doomsday there at the back. That was a Devastator figure that I did a custom Doomsday out of. Just a lot of really cool stuff, but all, generally speaking, in that 6-inch scale. Then we've got my complete Superman shelf. Pretty much everything across the board. I've got everything here from Mattel to DC Direct to whatever else is there. I don't think I have any Mafex on this shelf that I remember, but who knows? I even got a Spin Master Superman there from the new movie coming out. Just a lot of cool stuff. You got bad guys there off to the back on the left-hand side. Lots of different versions of Superman from lots of different companies, and kind of some of my favorite ones are the ones right there on the front. And I'm just a huge Superman fan, and having a shelf like that, must have for my collection. And then lastly, for DC stuff, I've got kind of just a general DC shelf. It's a lot of different stuff there. I do have a couple of McFarlane figures there at the back. We've got Lobo and Swamp Thing, which, because those are bigger characters, I wanted to keep those when I got rid of all my McFarlane stuff, just because I thought they'd still work well. And I like them there in that. And just a lot of other figures on that shelf. Again, going back to Kenner and Mattel and DC Direct and all that stuff. Got some DC icons there as well, which are a little too small for my taste. But just lots of really cool stuff. I love that more modern Superboy figure right there at the front. That's a DC Direct figure. It's a fantastic figure. And pretty much the best version, or the best, release of that version of Superboy that I have seen. All right, so now we get into my Marvel stuff, Marvel Legends, that kind of thing. So up at the top here, we've got my kind of, X-Men bad guys, Brotherhood of Mutants. So we've got several, I got 4 different versions of Juggernaut there. I'm a big Juggernaut fan. Can't wait for the new Capcom Juggernaut to come out. I got a couple of versions of Magneto, Onslaught, several versions of Apocalypse. I've got some Reavers that are, some are kit bashes, some are not. Spiral, a couple versions of Mr. Sinister, just pretty much across the board, just a nice smattering of, X-Men villains there. And then next up, we've got my first X-Men shelf. This is more of a general one. Pretty much all Marvel Legends across the board. There is one McFarlane there at the back. Also a Marvel Select Colossus at the back. And then that Bishop right there all the way to the left. That's the Mezco Bishop, which is one of the greatest action figures I have ever gotten my hands on across the board. Other than that, it's all pretty much, just Marvel Legends stuff. Some customs, some little kit bashes, things like that. But, just a good old-fashioned X-Men shelf. And then for this one, it's a little bit of a, kind of throw together. We got some Starjammers there. I've got that Warlock Build-A-Figure at the back, which, by the way, is my favorite Marvel Legends Build-A-Figure. We got some X-Force characters from various, eras of X-Force there on the left. Right there towards the middle, we got my Wolverine figures, Longshot, Dazzler, just a lot of stuff. Again, kind of a general X-Men themed shelf, but, a little bit more specific. And then we get to my Age of Apocalypse / what little is left of my What If section of my Marvel Legends collection. So pretty much, all those Age of Apocalypse figures that I actually did like and decided to keep, including a little kit-bashed Cyclops there and an older Toy Biz Sabretooth, just because I really like that figure, even though it's way too small. And then out of all the What If figures that came out, these were the ones I kept, minus the zombie figures, which you'll see here in just a minute. But we basically got Hydra Stomper in both versions of Captain Carter. Now we get on to one of the 2 MCU shelves that I have. And this was cut down a lot because I used to have a huge MCU collection that would have probably taken up 5 or 6 of these shelves. I'm now down to 2 just because I decided that just a lot of those figures I didn't like. But we got a lot of the Avengers figures there, including a little kit bash Stan Lee that I put together. Some of the bigger figures like Ant-Man and, we got Hulkbuster, Vulture, stuff like that. Then, of course, we got all my live-action versions of Spider-Man there, including some of the older Toy Biz ones and stuff like that. Huge Spider-Man fan, so I even though it's live-action, which isn't my favorite thing to collect, I'm still going to collect a lot of Spider-Man figures. And then, of course, we get to the remainder of my kind of live-action lot there. So lots of stuff from the Infinity Saga, Guardians of the Galaxy, Doctor Strange. We got Thanos and, just kind of a smattering there. I got a custom Korg there at the back. Then off to the right, you can see some of those figures are, older figures, Daredevil, an old Toy Biz, Mr. Fantastic, stuff like that. So it's just, again, just live-action stuff at this point. Then we get to my Marvel Cosmic shelf. Again, just cosmic characters that don't have a place anywhere else, really. So, you got a couple versions of Star-Lord. You got Silver Surfer, Rom, Thanos there at the back, Death's Head, Death's Head 2, Adam Warlock, Sentry, all that stuff. Just cosmic characters in general. And here we get to basically, other than Spider-Man, probably my favorite comic book character ever, Captain America. So I've got my Captain America shelf. There at the back, we've got that 12-inch Marvel Legend and the Toy Biz, what was this, Famous Covers Captain America? I can't remember, where he's got the cloth goods and everything. Other than that, just a lot of Captain America figures, mostly Marvel Legends, but we also got SH Figuarts. We got Revoltech. I think I've got, Square Enix. I've got a bunch of stuff there. Several customs on this shelf. Just a lot of stuff. Custom Bucky there. I got U.S. Patriot there, or Super Patriot there, excuse me, from Image Comics, just because he is a 6-inch scale figure, and he is kind of Image Comics version of Captain America, at least one of the versions of Captain America, so I threw him up on this shelf. But yeah, just lots of Captain America love. Then, of course, there's Thor, another favorite character of mine. Mostly just a lot of Thor figures. You got some Odin and Circe and Hercules. Got a few different versions of him. Got a random Harry Potter centaur there at the back because I just didn't know what else to do with him. And then my custom Conan the Barbarian figure. Just got to figure this was a good shelf for him to hang out on. Then we got an Avengers, kind of just a general shelf. I've got a couple of the shield robots there at the back. One that is completely finished, the other one that I just haven't gotten around to finish painting. Of course, both of them are from the Buzz Lightyear movie, whatever that thing was called. I don't even remember anymore. Got a Marvel Select Hulk there at the back. Love that. That is my favorite Hulk of all time. A couple different versions of She-Hulk. We got Black Knight, one of my favorite characters. Captain America, Falcon. Just, again, kind of a general Avengers shelf. Then we start to get into some of the teams. We got Alpha Flight, New Warriors, Winter Guard. Why I threw Bucky and Omega Red with Winter Guard, I don't know, because they're Russian, so why not throw them up there with Winter Guard? But these are all teams that I need to add to. Pretty much all Marvel Legends except for a couple of Marvel Select there at the back with the Winter Guard. But I'm building this shelf slowly. Then again, kind of another general shelf, Marvel villains. So we've got some Thunderbolts, we got some Dark Avengers, we got some Hulk villains, we got some Captain America villains, we got Hydra, we got AIM. Just a little bit of everything on this shelf. Basically, Marvel bad guys. Okay, and then we get to my basically kind of half symbiote shelf, half Spider-Verse shelf. So there on the right, pretty much all my symbiotes: Venom, Carnage, Anti-Venom, Miles is Venom, Gwen is Venom, just all kinds of stuff there. Again, Venom shelf, symbiote shelf. Then over on the left, you get into kind of the Spider-Verse stuff. So different versions of Peter Parker, Miles Morales, Spider-Ham, Gwen Stacy, ultimate version of Spider-Man, and Vulture. We've got my Spider-Mech back there, which I freaking love that figure. Alternate version of Prowler, Spider-Man Noir, all that stuff. So alternate versions of Spider-Man from the multiverse. And then, of course, Spider-Man shelf. Again, huge Spider-Man fan. So these are all kind of my pretty much straightforward versions of Spider-Man as he has been in the main Marvel 616, at least at one point in time or another. Even, the Captain Universe version of Spider-Man, that was in the 616. There's a couple of customs mixed in here, and of course we've got, the old Toy Biz stuff mixed in with newer Hasbro stuff, Mafex stuff, Revoltech stuff, kind of all mixed together, but it's a good solid Spider-Man shelf. I do need to put some background on this one in particular. All right, and on to Iron Man. Not one of my favorite characters, but a character that I would say is, B-level for me, but he just has a lot of cool action figures, so I've kind of built some of those up. Not nearly as many as some hardcore Iron Man fans, but enough to fill up a shelf. And again, just lots of different versions of Iron Man. We've got, Marvel Select, Marvel Legends, Customs. There's stuff from ZD Toys on this shelf, all kinds of stuff. It's just a fun character to collect, even though Iron Man and Tony Stark aren't one of my favorite characters from Marvel. All right, so we've got my mostly Fantastic Four shelf, but you can see my Marvel zombies there as well, and that's where some of the other what-if zombie figures ended up, including some of my Marvel Select zombies as well, but most of this is just going to be Fantastic Four, so a bunch of versions of Johnny Storm and the Thing there, a couple of versions of Sue, a couple of versions of Reed, a custom Johnny Storm there at the front that I made from a Fortnite figure, just supposed to be him right after he went through the cosmic rays. Also got a custom kind of truly evil Reed Richards there up at the front. So just, again, Fantastic Four with some zombie love thrown in. And then, of course, we've got Punisher and Marvel Knights. Marvel Knights is kind of just a throw together of a bunch of other characters that are more or less street level that I just didn't have another place for. So, whether it's Deathstroke, Iron Fist, Blade, Daredevil, Moon Knight. Of course, that is Bruce Lee there at the back. I didn't know where else to throw him, so just figured I'd throw him there. And then, of course, Punisher is the other half of the shelf. Got mostly just straight up Punisher figures, Toy Biz and Hasbro. There is a Mezco there at the back, and then up at the front we've got on the motorcycle is a custom Punisher that I did out of a Gung Ho G.I. Joe figure. And here is my Ghost Rider shelf. So, you've got Cosmic Ghost Rider, which is, obviously Marvel Legends. You've got the new Ghost Rider, Danny Ketch, that just came out, also Marvel Legends. And then I've got the old Toy Biz Danny Ketch in there. You've got Carter Slade there on his horse at the back. That's a custom. We've got the custom there all the way to the left, which is just kind of I don't know. I just made that out of the McFarlane Bat Cycle that he had put out. I thought it would look good as a Ghost Rider, so I did a bunch of stuff to it and made it more of a Ghost Rider bike. Also another custom Danny Ketch there, right there next to Blackheart. So about half custom, half legitimate stuff from either Toy Biz or Hasbro, but I'm a big Ghost Rider fan. And here we have my Superior Foes of Spider-Man shelf, or just Spider-Man villains, really. And it's just a kind of a, just a smattering of just about everybody that's not a symbiote. This is where I put them, basically, on this shelf right here. So, Green Goblin, Vulture, Demogoblin, Kingpin, just pretty much everything across the board. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a good, fun, figure shelf. There are a couple live action versions there of both Green Goblin and Electro. They really should be on the other shelf, but they're still really cool figures, and I don't know, they look good on this shelf, so I've just kind of left them there. All right, here we have kind of my old school Avengers shelf, like original Avengers. So you got a Toy Biz Giant Man along with a bunch of other Marvel Legends there. And, of course, a NECA Jack Kirby figure with a kit bashed Stan Lee superhero figure there. And then off to the left, because I just didn't really have anywhere else to put them, these are my Valiant Comics figures. So we've got the 3-0... what's that guy's name? I'm blanking now all of a sudden. Bloodshot, thank you. 3-0 Bloodshot, along with my custom Rye, my custom Magnus Robot Fighter, and then a custom Solar Man of the Atom that was put together by my friend Collector Express. So didn't really have, at some point I'd like to have enough Valiant characters to do a whole shelf. Right now they just kind of sit there next to the Avengers. And this is just kind of an Ultimate Avengers shelf that really only has 3 of the Ultimate Avengers. So you've got Ultimate Cap, then we've got an Ultimate Thor that's a custom of mine, an Ultimate Iron Man that's a custom of mine, even though the real legitimate Ultimate Iron Man has now been released by Marvel Legends. That Cyber Hulk or Mecha Hulk there at the back is another Collector Express custom that he put together for me. Phenomenal job. That thing is probably the nicest action figure I've ever seen in my life, especially the way he did it. It's absolutely beautiful. And then I just kind of got that sandwiched between a couple of, human scale versions of War Machine or Punisher War Machine, and then just the standard Iron Man helmets that I have there. Those are the only 2 like 1/1 scale collectibles that I have. And of course we get to my half Defenders, half Invaders shelf. I know it just says Defenders, but I gotta get an Invaders tag there. 2 of my favorite teams growing up. I loved reading the old Invaders and Defenders comics. So I wanted to put together a shelf for these Invaders there on the left, and all of those are customs or kit bashes. Well, really the only kit bashes are Namor. Everything else is a custom. The Captain America, the Bucky, the Blazing Skull, the Union Jack. There's even a little bit of customization there on the Human Torch. Not a lot, but that's my Invaders. And then of course on the Defenders, just a bunch of old school Defenders from different versions of the Defenders, but I figured why couldn't they all work together? So this is my Animal Warriors of the Kingdom shelf, which, so far I've only got these 7 figures. I want to pick up more. This is just a phenomenal line, and I don't know why I haven't picked up more of these figures yet. They're absolutely fantastic figures, and these are like Marvel Legends scale, Marvel Legends articulation with some of the coolest sculpts and character designs. By the way, if you haven't read Animal Warriors of the Kingdom, the comic book, do yourself a favor. I'm telling you, it's way better than anything that Marvel or DC is putting out nowadays. But also at the back there, we are talking Animal Wars of the Kingdom. I had the George from the, what was that movie? Rampage movie that I'd picked up on clearance at Walmart years ago just because I thought it was cool. I think I paid like, I don't know, $7 for it. He goes great here, and so does my T-Rex from Jurassic Park, which I originally bought for one of my kids, and then they didn't want it, so guess what? It goes on this display. And so this is what little of my Dragon Ball Z collection I actually have out and displayed. I've been trying to go through my Dragon Ball Z collection and just filter it down to the characters I really want. So very small collection at the moment. Of course, we've got some comic books there at the back. Silver Surfer 50, Spider-Man 2099 #1, Infinity Gauntlet #1. But this is just a very, very small little Dragon Ball Z display that I like to keep. Okay, so here is my growing Street Fighter collection. Not much yet, still got more figures to go, all Jada. I don't collect anything else but the Jada stuff. And you can't really see it there at the back, but there's an original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Metalhead, which was my absolute favorite action figure as a kid back in the late 80s. And then a custom Boba Fett. It's the only 6-inch scale Star Wars figure that I have. And here we get to some of my G.I. Joe collection, and I don't really have these in any kind of order, and there's customs thrown all in here, so I'm not really going to go through much of it other than on the right there, that Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes right up at the front are both customs, and then that custom there right to the left of Storm Shadow is a custom Tyler. Was his name Tyler Rake or something like that? I don't even remember what his name was, but basically lots of customs thrown in here. And then this is the rest of my G.I. Joe collection at the moment. I did get rid of a lot of G.I. Joe stuff that I didn't want when I moved here a few months ago. So my 6-inch scale G.I. Joe collection has dwindled quite a bit, but it's dwindled to the characters I want the most, and I'm being just a little more picky when it comes to 6-inch scale G.I. Joe, which is kind of how I started with Star Wars back in the day when I decided to completely dump 6-inch Star Wars and go exclusively 3 3/4 to 4-inch. And then here's one of my old school McFarlane shelves. This is just some of the Spawn stuff that I've got. A bunch of different versions of Spawn and some other characters. This collection is slowly building up for now, but I really, really liked at the time in the late 90s what McFarlane was doing. I liked it far more than I like anything they're doing today, and as I've gone back and started picking up older figures again, I'm realizing how much I liked these figures, and so that collection is slowly building. And you can see that here as well with my Youngblood and Wetworks collection slowly starting to build up. Again, all old school 90s McFarlane stuff. I just love the way these figures look, even though the articulation sucks. The figures themselves were just so cool and innovative, and without a doubt, without McFarlane doing what they did in the 90s, Toy Biz never would have started doing what they did in the 2000s with Spider-Man Classics and X-Men Classics and Fantastic Four Classics, which is, of course, what eventually gave us Marvel Legends. And then this shelf is just, you got a couple of McFarlane figures there. You know, I've got a couple of NECA figures there. Got a Halo figure at the back, which I honestly don't even remember which Halo figure that is. Is that Jazzwares or something? I don't know. It was just a really cool Master Chief that I really liked. So he goes on this kind of catch-all shelf. And now we start getting to my 3 3/4 inch collection. So we've got as much as possible here, but I just don't have room like I did before I moved to really get everything out. So there's a lot of my 3 3/4 collection that isn't displayed. I've only got about half of it displayed, but we got a top shelf here. So we got an X-Wing, we got an E-Wing, we got some Shadows of the Empire stuff. We've got some Dark Empire stuff. We've got some Clone Wars era ships there. Really cool display right there. Then we get to a lot of my Mandalorians and my bad guys. So, you know, Stormtroopers, several versions of Vader, the Emperor, you know, some bounty hunters, all kinds of stuff. TIE Fighter, we've got the Spy Droid, you got an ATST Walker. Now we come on down the shelf, we've got the, you know, Cloud City car. We've got a lot of my Clone Wars era stuff. Clone Troopers, Anakin, Obi-Wan, a lot of my Rebels stuff, my Star Wars Rebels, which I just love that series. And even though those figures were only 5 POA, I like them. I work them into this collection because this collection here with the Star Wars stuff is just a mix of all their 3 3/4 and 4-inch stuff. You know, new stuff like Star Wars Vintage Collection, old stuff like original, 70s and 80s retro stuff, Power of the Force stuff mixed in here, Clone Wars era stuff. It's just because it's all the same scale, even though there's lots of different articulation going on here, it just works together as a collection. And here's my A-Wing shelf, or my evolution of the A-Wing. So we've got the 3 main versions of the A-Wing here, which I need to do a video on these, because I think this would make for a really interesting video, not just talking about the toys, but the evolution of the A-Wing in Star Wars lore, in universe canon. So I'll probably do that video at some point, but this is kind of my A-Wing shelf, just with some assorted figures thrown in. And now we get to one of my 2 3 3/4 and 4-inch scale G.I. Joe shelves. Just a lot of stuff here. Just a lot packed on. At some point I'm going to have to expand this because I have more that's still boxed away in a closet. But it's just kind of a little bit of everything. You got the base there at the back, which was just a cheap Walmart toy that I repainted. You got the Halo Warthog there up front. You got an ATV. You've got the G.I. Joe version Megatron that turns into the His Tank. Lots of characters. There's even some of the Lanyard, the core figures mixed in there just because I like the way they go with G.I. Joes. But just kind of an assortment of stuff here. Then we get to more G.I. Joe stuff, so a couple versions of the His Tank, just a lot of stuff. A couple of the vehicles there just aren't even G.I. Joe vehicles. They're just things that I customized and put together because they were in the right scale. Man, as I'm looking at this picture, this shelf sure is dusty. I'm going to have to dust these figures off, but just again, just lots of 3 3/4 and 4-inch G.I. Joe stuff there, including a couple of things here and there. There's a Metroid there in the background, just kind of posing as a Cobra power suit. So there's some variation going on here. Then we get to one of my shelves where I have a couple of, more adult toys there, along with some Warhammer stuff that I've painted, Death's Head from, the Marvel Universe line, which I only picked him up. I don't collect that line at all. I don't collect Marvel in that scale, but I just love Death's Head as a character. It got an Exo Squad there, JT Marsh in his Exo frame. That is my that is my imported DL44 blaster. It's amazing. I should do a video on that one of these days because it's like basically modeled after the real Mauser that they used to make that gun for Han Solo in 1977. They used a real gun in that movie and just like added stuff to it. And that is basically that. It's real working. It's got a, you can actually cock it back and use the safety and the hammer and the trigger and everything on that thing. It's an absolutely amazing replica of Han Solo's DL44. And finally, we get to the last shelf that I have up on display. This is right above my computer. So lots of 3 3/4 and 4-inch scale figures there. We got a bunch of Joy Toys stuff. We've got Judge Dredd. We've got the Lord of the Rings figures from McFarlane, which the movie sucked, by the way. If you saw that War of Rohirrim or whatever it was called, the movie was absolutely awful. But the figures are actually really cool, and since I collect that scale, I decided to pick that whole wave up. A couple of old school Kenner DC action figures there, and then of course we have some of my 3 3/4 and 4-inch scale G.I. Joe Storm Shadow figures. Storm Shadow is my absolute favorite G.I. Joe character, has been since I was a kid in the 80s, and I'm working on trying to get every 3 3/4 or 4-inch scale version of Storm Shadow ever made, and I'm about halfway there at this point. I think I've got like 24 of the 50 or so that have actually been made, so we'll work on that. And when I get them all, I'll definitely do a video on that. Of course, we've got my Punisher #1s up there, Warzone, War Journal, Armory, and then just the Punisher miniseries. So, bam! That is it. That is my collection, at least the portion of it that I have displayed out as of now. And when I get some more room, I will put out another video as I get everything redone. But that's pretty much it for now. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think. I appreciate you guys watching, and always remember to enjoy your collection.